Hey there, Mark. What's going on? What's up, meows? Let's pull that music down a little bit. Can you hear me all right? I see my bars going. Just want to make sure. Hello, Pixel. Hello, Kata. Say gain. Say gain. Okay, thank you. Listening to the Spotify playlist that I made to work on this game while listening to. Just waiting a couple minutes. I'm gonna probably get rolling at about 6:05. Okay. So this is just a recording basically for my own sake. I built a big game. I'm a game designer by trade, so I need to make some resume and portfolio material. So this playthrough is effectively going to be me walking through my game and discussing different design decisions that I made, um, either in initial development or after release, as basically feature updates or improvements and bug fixes and all that fun stuff that comes with supporting a game out in the wild. Um, so, okay, what's This Place is Cursed? This Place is Cursed is a puzzle adventure game where the primary means that the player interacts with the world around them is through a novel magic system. Um, why did I want to make this game the way I made it? Well, I like magic in fantasy. Um, in particular, like I'm inspired by the Wheel of Time's magic system, where the mages basically like spin threads of elements together in order to concoct magic. What's up, Indie Dreams Media? And so that idea of like piecemealing magic together with constituent components was like really attractive to me. That on one hand, and then the other hand, the D&D magic system, which often discusses verbal, somatic, and material components, basically stuff, sounds, and movements. And so I wanted to basically make a game that explored interacting with magic in that way, basically in a more simulation fashion, because like a game and its systems can live anywhere on a spectrum, where on one end is abstraction and the other is simulation. And we have sim games, that's a whole thing, and then we've got games that are more abstracted. So like the way that I explain this is like typically in a video game, if you want to throw a fireball, you press a button, you press your fireball button, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make the act of casting magic require kind of more fantastical classic elements like components and spell words and stuff like that. Yeah. Name of the Wind, Indie Dream says. Yeah, so this was basically the first stab at this concept that I did, and this was more in the model of the Wheel of Time. So you could pull out like your spell book, and this you move along this interface using the right stick, and all you have to do is touch the element. So I've conjured like a wisp of fire there, and if I like invoke that spell, hey, I get the flame spell. We'll see this same concept kind of pulled forward, obviously, all the way to the final game. So this was my first go at this concept. Then I kind of started to fall in love with kind of liminal space and Cthulhu-esque, what do they call it, cosmic horror kind of settings. Games like Control, for instance. I'm very excited for Alan Wake 2, but games like Control, that setting, that vibe. Inscription was another one I really loved. So I wanted to take the idea in more that direction. So that's where we're going to go now to the final product here. I did actually just release for Dreamers out there. I've released the prototype of This Place is Cursed. We're going to play the real game, of course. You can go play the prototype if you've already played the real game and see just, humble beginnings if you want to. Oh yeah, thanks. My cam was covering the glyph interface that I was referring to in that prototype. That's okay. I put my cam here because it doesn't block anything in the real game, but thanks for that, yeah. Indie Dream says I really like how the magic system feels complex in that sense. The magic feels like a language I'm speaking into existence. That's awesome. That's exactly what I want to hear. So, this is going to be This Place is Cursed. We're going to reset prog here. Wooded weekend trip turns upside down when your friends vanish and the vacation house seals you in. So it's very tropey in that way. So one of my goals, I'm going to start to talk about my goals about the game. I had my pillars that I'll get into later, but the reason for making the game in the first place is I'm a professional designer now, but the first design that I did was in Dreams, and oftentimes the Dreams community is interested in the question of whether or not you can make a big game in Dreams, if it's possible. And there have been a number of creators that have done just that. In fact, Pixel Gorilla's in chat. He's got one of the most polished, most realist games on Dreams. Most people that I spoke to while having this conversation cited Locke as their favorite game. So I looked at Locke, and I looked at other games that are on the Dreamverse that are popular. Like Escape Room, generally speaking, is really big in Dreams. Probably because they're great first games to make, maybe. And probably because the engine lends itself to them pretty well too. It's like way harder to make a competent action game. Okay, thank you. I'm going to adjust my volume. You may want to make a competent action game in Dreams, but that's quite difficult. This is my creation. Oh, D-Toilet, yeah. I don't know, who's that? So, okay, so here we are in the house. Sharp noise echoes throughout the house, then silence, no voices, no laughter, no sounds of signs of anyone. This tutorial is meant to introduce the player to the book. The book is the primary interface for This Place is Cursed. It's how the player will keep track of all the magical knowledge that they're going to find. This was directly inspired by Outer Wilds. In fact, honestly, the structure of the game is quite Outer Wilds-like. Something I really love about that game, Outer Wilds is my favorite game, is that it puts ultimate trust in the player. They give you the pieces, they tell you about how the universe works, and then the rest is up to you. They don't even give you a game end objective. There's no quest log to speak of. Everything, including the conflict and the resolution, is up to the player to discover, and I really admired that. So I did that here. There is not going to be a quest log here. We just set the player up with kind of the way the world works, and then they're left to their own devices. And that kind of game is very polarizing, I think, because many gamers will just play a game expecting the game to help them in traditional ways, and they're not really interested in doing the legwork. But if you find an audience that is interested in kind of meeting you halfway, um, then they're going to be, I think, even more excited to play the game, right? I mean, it's just like a simple, like, it's very niche, so the niche audience will love it more. Okay, so we show the player the book. The fantasy of the book is that this girl is a bookworm. She was journaling in the intro, and now her journal has been kind of like taken over by the magic of the house. So we explain to the player that the book will write notes for them. The second note is just a mention of the handwriting. I'm just drawing the player's attention to the fact that this is her journal. And the third item says the book is going to beckon when it notes something new. Basically, it's telling you about the UI that we'll look at in a second. A couple more sentences. I just saw too many players bail too soon. I felt like I just talked about how this game is niche, but I really wanted to grab as many people as I could in the intro, run them through basically the first iteration of the game loop, and then if they like it, they'll stick with it forever. So I tell them, hey, go read stuff. You're going to get some cool magic. That's basically, I wanted to entice them, reminding them that they're going to get cool magic. It says so on the cover of the dream. I don't feel like I'm too concerned with the spoiler. So I worked with an environmental artist who was able to help me with basically 1.5 scenes of the 6 or so. He did fantastic work. I'm so lucky to have him. He's on Dreams under SZ78. His art is incredible. He does character work as well as environments. And he made the asset kit for the house. He did this block out of the house. I did the block out, of the space, and then he came and artified it with the kit. When we get there, I will point out spaces that he didn't do, and I think if I draw your attention to them, it'll be obvious because his rooms look a lot better than mine. Go figure. He's an artist. I think that's maybe like an interesting lesson learned with this game is when you're at the helm of a huge game like this, you just have to be prepared to fill in the cracks. Especially when we're talking about a hobby game, but even in a professional setting, right? Stuff comes up and people are unable to do what they intended to deliver, and then somebody else has to fill in the gaps. I've been sick with COVID. I have COVID now. Sorry for my voice. For a week. So at work, somebody else has to pick up the slack for me. That's just real life. So I did a lot of the environments that I had hoped that my artist would be able to do, but was not able to. So here's the first thing about the book. We've read a note. It's kind of I needed every note to achieve a couple of objectives. Any note that related to a spell clue obviously is going to have words highlighted like this one. And I always had the highlighted word on the last text of the note. Never. This is a 4-stab note, which is actually long. I don't like having 4Bs because players don't like to read. But the book clue will always be in the last tile. Now the book is beckoned, so it's the kind of call to action for the player to hit their book button, and then we see the note fill in here. And so that's the initial beat here is just teaching the player, hey, this is how the interface works. This is what you're going to be doing for the rest of the game. The game is, I say it's non-linear. It's like a Metroidvania, I just realized I had my music running. One sec. In the background, I heard Hans Zimmer creeping in. It's like a Metroidvania. You might find spaces you're unable to progress past until you have a new power or something like that. So it is possible to hit dead ends, and again, for the type of audience I'm interested in, that's great. They hit a dead end, they don't know how to solve a problem, they remember some things, they come back later, and now they're off to the races. This is a piece of a puzzle that the player can't solve. This is something I try to do a lot, is show players things early on that they can't interact with, that they'll have to come back to later. I'm not going to read every note, but basically many notes have talk about the fantasy of the house. I was really inspired by Control. I was really inspired by Stranger Things. So yeah, This is the first puzzle that the player is able to solve without magic. And even this puzzle's got things to talk about, things I've learned. Initially, so the solution to the puzzle, the puzzle asks the player to observe the moon's signs by looking at the lunar windows. And my intention is that they notice that those shapes on the box look like that shape, and like this shape over here. And like this one behind this curtain. Obviously the curtain is an intentional homage to like horror trope. Lots of stuff like that. Lots of references to real world things, and that's purposeful. This is a spoiler run through, so later on we'll talk about kind of the secret ending and what that means and why I made it the way I made it, but for now we're going to solve this puzzle. Yeah, I spent a little bit over a year on this, and I worked for probably 15 to 20 hours a week, I would say. Every day, chipping away a little bit. On the weekends, a ton. Why am I reading this? I'm getting distracted. Yeah, it was a long time. And that's kind of the sad truth of it is like Dreams isn't really optimized for a big game like this. It's obviously possible. Thank you for saying so. Whoops, man. But it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. Sharing assets between people is very difficult. There are things you can do though. Here, I'll talk about that real quick because it's a valuable lesson if your intention is to make a big game in Dreams. We will look at the asset pack that SC78 made. I have a copy of it here. Here we are. Especially with the limitations. Yeah, this VOD's going to go to YouTube. Especially with the creation limits due to reduced database footprint for us online, you want to be making kits for games. You don't want to be making single assets. So this is like one asset technically as far as Dreams is concerned, but it's like 100 things, right? So this is really valuable because I can come in here, I can grab one out, I can go place it in the world, and then my artist could do work on this kit and more items would come into existence in my copy in the scene. If he made changes to any of these assets, right, they'd be in place. So that's all good. Yeah, made heavy use of that. Okay, so I have my first rune. So this is basically the biggest hump for players because, again, I was trying to make a very hands-off sort of game. Trying to teach them the interface to using magic without a proper tutorial. I could have just had a screen-wide layover that froze time and said, hold this button, press these buttons, etc., etc. And in fact, I just so don't want to here, even though I'm sure it would be beneficial. So what do we do instead? I popped a hot pink on the magics button that's appeared on their screen. That prompt wasn't there seconds ago. Now it is. Surely the player will notice, right? No, of course not. That's a ridiculous expectation. So I'm trying to draw attention to it. This works. Now they're holding the magic button down. So magic is performed by moving your hand to hold the forms. You're holding the magic forms, that a witch might use. And then you also have to conjure your runes while holding your forms. So that's why I now have a button prompt in the top right saying press circle to conjure the rune that you just unlocked. If I do so, the rune appears in the position, and all the spells are basically just dial up a spell. To cast a light spell, you do this combination. To cast the travel spell, you do that combination. But initially, I didn't have the pulsing on the prompts. I didn't have the paint drawing upward to ask the player, come on, raise your hand up. Go ahead, raise it up. And when they raise it up, this line is supposed to draw their eye to the button prompt. It doesn't work. This does not work. And so, it's as good as it's going to get, basically. But without a proper tutorial, I think this is as hard as I can go. Eventually, the player understands, I hold, and then I press. And if they do that, if they put the rune there, I stop telling them how to do it. They get it now. And it had to be the top position, because in the book the light rune appears on the right, and this confuses a lot of people. They definitely try to put the light rune only in this position, or they think they can only put it in that position. So that's why I was asking, you got to go up. You got to go up. Also, up circle is one piece of the first spell, so this is all intentional. Okay, so how does the player know what the combination is for a spell? Well, that's where we start to be like real witches and wizards in the the books and movies we love. You have to study your spell book, damn it. You got to page through it. You have to compare your information about forms with your information about runes and spells. So let me go gather the couple of notes that have to do with the first spell, and then we'll take a look at the book. It's this one. So now I've learned that there's something to do with forms in heavens above and depths below. And then here, a very proper CTA, like telling the player this is what you do to invoke the flame to cast a spell. Let the spell's verses guide your forms and runes. So I'm trying to draw as much as I can while staying kind of like in character, the connection between spell words and forms and runes. We highlight the runes and forms information on the spell words, and we slap them in the book. So this is all the player gets. They have to draw light from above and cast it below. That highlighted word appears here. Light is circle, and heavens above and depths below are also highlighted here. So they got to piece it together and dial up their first spell, which is light. I'll touch briefly on how that works just for the dreamers. It's what we're basically doing is this little UI exists at all times following the player, and when I am in casting form and I hold right, for instance, this block pivots over this block. They've got signal senders and receivers, and they're proximal. So this guy can only talk to whichever rune position he's currently sitting on. And then when I press a button, he basically tells that position, okay, it's your turn to produce a circle rune. It's your turn to produce a square rune or whatever. Here are the runes. They're just emitted, and then they live for a moment and they die. And while they live, they're playing a timeline that's emitting their signal, the value that they represent. I take the value of every rune in every position and do some math and generate a number, and that number represents the spell. Okay, so we have our first spell. We have light. So my first design pillar for this game is practical magic, which means that because the magic is so goddamn hard to cast, it better work really well. It needs to work exactly as advertised, and it needs to work like consistently in such a way that the player is able to jump to conclusions about the way that the magic will work, and it should do what they think. That if that's true, then I've done my job correctly. So like this candle was lit before I ever got here, but I can cast light on it and it'll douse the flame, and I can cast light again and it'll light the flame back up again. I'm going to use the recast shortcut. This will cast the last spell that you cast a lot just to save time, so I don't have to dial up every time. I did that because there were a couple places where I was like, I'm asking the player to cast the same spell like 5 times in a row. It does get tedious. It's okay, they have a little shortcut. My second design pillar for the game is everything's a toy. I wanted everything in this game to be interactable. I kind of gave myself a rule of thumb that every room should have like 4 to 5 things that you can interact with. That's going to grow or shrink depending on size. So like the bathroom only has 2. It's got the light and it's got the curtain. Obviously, I'm not talking about gameplay relevant stuff. That's why I use the word toy. It's just fun to play with. People like manipulating space, even if it's as simple as turning a light on and off. One of my favorites is the piano, which just plays random notes from a minor scale. It's fun. People love this shit. It's great. Okay, let's go solve... Here. Okay, so I got the light spell. Here's some candles. I'm gonna start lighting all the candles that I find. This is another toy, but I also have it here because I have a puzzle on the second level that includes this thing, and I wanted to teach the player how it works earlier. Light douses shadows, so this is something that the book will tell them if they read their entry on flame. Forgot to look at this. After you cast a spell, the spellbook tells you all about it, so it tells you exactly how it works. It conjures a flame and lights candles or hearths. That's all it does. People will try to like light trees on fire. It doesn't work. The book doesn't say it can light trees on fire, and the book doesn't lie. Just some flavor stuff here, but you know, it's fun to manipulate. And this is also kind of demonstrating the kind of immersive sim nature of the game. I try to make everything work together. Everything is built modularly. Like this logic wise is sending a signal of light from there to there, and so like if I were to hold a candle over here, that shadow would disappear too, but I can't reach a candle over there right now. Some hints for the player to discover. I'm always trying to push the player in a direction, so that they have direction, while thinking that they're coming up with it on their own, right? Of course, there's no quest log or campaign marker saying you should go to the second floor next, but the player should go to the second floor next. So I'm telling them how to do that. Let's light these candles. Those paint lines I added post. Yeah, it's the ship log, exactly. The book is the ship log from Outer Wilds. I didn't initially have the paint the VFX moving from candle to this book, but many players miss this reveal. My intention is that they light the candles and they're rewarded with the book, and they just walk away. You know, it's just not. It just wasn't a hot enough moment, you know. So I had to do a little extra afterwards. That could have been better. So this is another spell book. Now, at this point, the player knows, and I've got great videos of people, including Indie Dreams Media, discovering these moments for themselves, and they're so rewarding. You can see for the player when they understand how magic works in this game, and the second spell is their chance to prove it. So we've got more words: shadows above, light, and depths. If we look at our book, we don't have anything that represents shadow, so we got to go find that. This I'm just going to hold on to that for a minute, but that ritual site is another example of everything being a toy. It's fun to play with, and players play with it before they're able to solve it, which is good. This note tells us that there is a rune that represents shadow. Now we're on the lookout for the rune. We see that there's another rune box, which means there's another rune to earn. And one of these notes mentions or draws the player's attention to the fact that they can spin this, and when they line up the runes with the candles light, but they can never light all three at once because there's a rune missing. So they have to have the spell to light the third. Again, I'm very much leaning into like witch tropes, you know. This is kind of evocative of maybe the divination teacher's space in Harry Potter. Since I'm skipping over the lore, I'm going to talk about it just so we kind of like fast forward the story here. But basically what's going on is the main character's friends have disappeared, vanished overnight. She's trying to find them to rescue them. This is where they've disappeared from. They've been ripped from this reality into another. The main character doesn't know that yet. And basically the notes that the character is finding, they look to be written by a group of witches from hundreds of years ago. Not her, not her friends, but some other people that she doesn't know. And these witches from 100 years ago are talking about how they were brought to this house to train under an elder witch who ended up kidnapping a bunch of the girls and disappearing. And the witches in the notes are trying to track down the elder witch, and so our character follows in their footsteps. Okay, so we've got this. This is our new spell, and this is the first opportunity for the player to kind of prove that they understand the magic. They place the shadow rune above, the light rune below, and they get this new spell. This new spell is basically my game's version of like detective vision. Detective vision kind of sucks though, right? Like it's like when you have it always, the player is always like viewing the world through this like dichromatic, view. You don't get to look at any of the cool environments. All you're looking at is like glowing shit. Terrible, terrible. Instead, we're going to give the player a diegetic form of detective vision, so they feel smart, they feel like a witch, damn it. So the Moonfire spell, as the book describes, will basically reveal hidden stuff. It's kind of like a black light. Yeah. So the player has this spell. They're going to probably start casting it in different places. This hint in particular says that the Knight's Flame offers passage throughout the house, so they might decide to try to use this spell in some places. I really wanted to reward curiosity. That's a key goal of this game, is to always give the curious gamer payoff for whatever they're trying. So there's a lot of stuff in this game that works not because it's important for the game, either the regular ending or the secret ending, but just because it's cool and it makes sense in the world, right? And I want the payoff to be there for players that try different things with their magic. I'll show off some when we get there. This is the first example of that. There's no reason for the player to try Blacklight here with Moonfire, except for the fact that it's cool. And if they do that, they get a pink glowy button prompt, and they see an eyeball and they hear weird static in their ears. And if they hit the interact prompt, a TV screen appears. And so all of these, this is going to be basically the first peek into the secret ending stuff. Everything to do with the secret ending is impossible within the context of the game in a consistent way. So, well, there's no TV there, but now there's a TV there. That's, it's weird, it's wacky, it's surreal. And so we'll see that theme recur with the secret stuff. That hint basically told us, hey, go use your magic on the TV on channel 3, because the player can flip through the TV screen channels. It looks like a toy. It looks like just something to play with. But the TV guide says something strange about channel 3. It says this will help us open our eyes to the truth. And if we add magic to it, like that other clue said with the weird TV screen, we get button prompts. But these are PlayStation button prompts. You'll notice, like, except for the rune button prompts up there, right, the actual game UI, we don't talk about square or circle. That doesn't mean anything to a witch, but it's here in the world. So we're kind of like breaking, the fourth wall. We're in the place between. There's notes here that describe things about the secret ending. Basically, there's a new kind of character voice speaking directly to the witch, saying that they know about Mother, that it's difficult to find this area, this hallway, but those people open and curious will find their way back. And we have basically a strong CTA, strong call to action for the player. Hey, look for this eye symbol, listen for this signal, and you're going to find your way back here, and I'm going to tell you secrets. So I tell the player how to get back here, and I entice them with what they're going to get. This is all stuff I changed post-release, because I wanted this line to be more enticing, and I wanted it to be something that the player had agency in engaging with, which I felt like they kind of didn't when I didn't give them quite so explicit hints. I unified all of the secrets that they'll find with eyeballs and with the sound, but I never told them that that was important, and players didn't get it necessarily. So I feel like I'm only telling them just enough so that they have the tools, and I wasn't giving them the tools initially. We're going to open up some secret areas with our new magic. This note here suggested to the player that these candles are not merely decorative, that they have purpose. And so once they get that spell that talks about secrets, they come here and look for this route. Okay, so the second floor's kind of narrative conceit is the two of the sisters have followed one of them up who has ran ahead of them, desperate to find a way to combat the witch plaguing their setting hundreds of years ago. They believe that the elder witch, is hiding, and they're here to find out where she's hiding. Where has she disappeared to? All the magic notes that are on this floor have to do with teleportation and extraplanar travel and things like that. Like, for example, we learned that there are two realities, the material plane and the umbral plane. This is very much a Stranger Things thing, the Upside Down, of course, or just the general fantasy nether realm sort of stuff from D&D. The Stranger Things thing is from D&D, right? They learned that the witches were performing binding rituals that will bind an object to a particular realm. So if I activate this rune, it gets bound to the umbral plane, disappears from the material plane. It's no longer here. You can see its shadow, which is cool, and you can see the hidden runes because of the moonfire candle. We douse it, right? We can't see that anymore. Alright, so the player knows they need to get through this gate, but they know that the light from this candle won't reach. So this is the first little hurdle. My third and final design pillar for this game, after practical magic and everything's a toy, is fantastic locations. I wanted the spaces to be awe-inspiring. I wanted people to go, whoa, that's cool. Part of that means that you budget your cool for different spaces. If every space is cool, then none of them are cool. There has to be some sort of contrast in the experience, right? But that meant I needed to rely on my environmental artist, and he did this space. It looks awesome. I'm super stoked about it. He did about half of this floor, and then the rest will be my work. For instance, I did this room. It looks okay, I guess. He did that room, though. It looks great. Okay, so we gotta find a way to get Moonfire close to that gate so we can banish it and pass through it. This is a secret ending thing. It's so funny, when I had my first playtesters playing this game, they're like, I don't want to pass through it. I'm like, just walk through it. And they're like, oh, players won't want to walk through it, and they won't trust that they know where they're going and things like that. And it's okay. It's going to be okay. These are fun. These are a toy. But they're actually not a toy. They have gameplay relevance. We'll see it in a bit. I don't know if you've noticed, but the lamps in this hallway aren't the greatest. And it's really cold. So this room is a room that gave me a lot of trouble. I had this idea, and this is one of those cases where hey, maybe a cool idea is just not feasible. Maybe I just didn't pull it off well enough. maybe it's fine. It's so hard to answer those questions with a game like this because it's somebody told me they don't think it's a puzzle game. It's like more of a riddle game because the game kind of just tells you what to do if you're reading reading the notes and you're kind of gleaning what they're telling you. Um, so like this note kind of explains explicitly what I want the player to do, and players have a hard time with it. Um, and so like I tried different things to draw attention. I really wanted it to be subtle and made the mechanic less and less and less subtle, and it's hard to know when to stop that, right? You have to kind of at some point stick to your guns and think about the audience that you're making the game for and look to your design pillars to answer questions like that. Um, so I think my design pillar of practical magic means that the payoff for casting magic needs to be robust, which means if the player is doing the thing that I want them to loosely, but they're like just not quite getting it, then you have to give them that little extra. So this note tells the player to keep their candle lit with moonfire so you can keep your eye on spirits, like that one. Make sure your candlestick casts the moon's light. And this in particular, I followed a lonely ghost as it slipped into the study hidden between this room and Mother's chambers. It's just not enough, but that's what I want the player to do. Follow a ghost right outside of this room. And so the player just might fuck off, right? Like, this is too much time to be sitting here. But here's the ghost. And if you notice, it's the ghost that's causing the lamps to flicker, and it's the ghost that's causing the character to breathe icy, cool breath. But this right here, this slowly walking down the hall, is exactly what players have no patience for. This is the wall rippling is something I added very recently because I just felt too many players were getting stuck here. It's like the one thing that players had trouble with. So we can walk right in here. You see chalkboards, mother telling us how to work this fireplace, light it, select my destination, cast magics of travel, which I don't have. This 3-step process is terrible. This is players had a hard time with this. Maybe it's okay. I never heard anybody say I really hate that, but I saw them struggle with it often. I think what I wanted to have a fast travel system in the game. I wanted it to be a cool witchy thing. Traveling through fireplace is a trope, obviously. It's a Harry Potter thing, probably in other stuff too. So I had to have it, but because I wanted the world to work consistently, if there's a fire, of course you have to light it with your fire spell. That's what the game's promises, right? An immersive sim connection of spells. So it ended up being a little more complicated than I wanted to, but I think, I don't know, it might be as good as it's going to get. I'm going to read notes here, and they're going to give us some more book information. This note is basically telling us that we need spells in order to interact with objects like this that have big spell icons on them. Players always pass by this spot with the witchfire candle lit because witchfire is sweet. It shows you secrets. Of course, you have it lit. It's like the detective vision problem of the player always having it on, but they get to carry it and it doesn't ruin the view. This is like I said, a secret for the secret ending. It's called out with eyeballs now. It didn't used to be, but I was trying to unify all this stuff to give the player some tools. Notes again talking about magic objects have spell icons on them. Also, by the way, the Moonfire makes this magic object glow like a huge spotlight, trying to draw a lot of attention to that object. We've got another rune box to solve. This one asks us to produce the light of sun and moon, so this is where our extra candle is going to come in handy. And again, this is all systemic, right? This is working because this candle emits a signal that says I'm Moonfire, and this box is listening for it, so it doesn't matter if it's produced by this candle or that candle, right? It's all the same to the box. We're going to banish this pillar. So the general pattern here is that the player's over here. They're trying to play with this. This does nothing. Right? If only this pesky pillar was out of the way. The players also learn to carry this Moonfire candle around. They know that the witches here from the notes were banishing objects in these rooms. So they get this. And now we've got two forms of light. And our third rune. So, laying all of these notes and boxes and stuff, how did I do something like this? I mapped the shit out of this on Lucid Charts. I've got a big web, I'll pull it up in fact, of basically progression maps of where the player will go in which rooms and which notes they're gonna find, basically. That way we can make sure that they've got all like the requisite pieces. So I know that in order to have light, you have to have the Circa rune, right? You have to have heavens above and depths below, etc., etc. And so I just map these out, basically using like lock and key, you know, progression here. So, you know, witch light acts as a gate. There's a witch light gate here. You need witch light in order to pass through it, and that will get you upstairs. It will also get you into the gardens, for instance. When I was deciding like what spells to make, I tried to think of witchy things. So, you know, lighting candles with magic is like, to me, the most classically, you know, witch thing I can think of. And Moonfire kind of came from the black candle from Hocus Pocus, the movie, right? You know, like these magic flames that are the opposite of light. I felt was just a very derivative idea, and yeah, I say that in a good way. Derivative is sweet. Yeah, the other spells, again, drawing on the Stranger Things influence, right? We needed a way to visit the Upside Down, of course, like Elle does, like you know, adventurers do in D&D. And speaking with the dead, another trope that I'm pretty fond of, and which is having to do with like nature. I feel like is a big trope as well, of course, like with Wiccanism and stuff like that. So we'll see all those themes kind of hit through the spells. I had another spell plan that I cut for scope. I cut a lot of stuff for scope, zone, a whole spell. The last spell that didn't make the cut was going to be a spell called Resonance that allowed you to like tune the frequency of things, including crystals, like kind of again leaning into those classic like witch tropes with crystals. So that got scrapped, but for anybody who's played the game, you'll know, and we'll see later, that the crystals still made it into the game. I just had the player interact with them by using their runes raw. It didn't actually require a spell. Alright. Okay, so we've got another rune. If we read this note, we have another spell. I think I'll just cast a spell instead of reading the notes, right? But we'll take a look at what I've got. Arcane ley lines pierce the depths, carry my flesh from near to far. Sometimes it was easy to come up with cool sounding spells that used the keywords I needed. Sometimes not so easy. The spell on the opposite page here, the plant spell, the lyrics are kind of bunk, but I had to kind of work with the runes and the elements that I defined. I wanted to define those in sets, so like shadow and light, life and death, right? These are kind of just quintessential dichotomies that I wanted to include. So my point was that we don't have everything, I think. Arcane depths, flesh near and far. We have arcane. We don't have flesh. We have depths, but we don't have near and far. I wanted to allow the player to accidentally cast magic, either by pure brute force, because it's like, oh my god, I discovered a spell, that's cool, right? That's like a very classically witch or wizard thing to do, or because the player was able to find 3 of the 4 clues they needed for the spell. I didn't want to require complete note coverage in order to progress through the game. So I'm gonna just think really hard, and I'm gonna cast a spell. Flesh from near to far, arcane depths, and so we get the spell. One thing that I tried to focus on with this game was, and I mentioned it briefly, but I'll talk a little bit more about it here, is investing like your development time into the elements that are important, right? You have to have, I feel like I needed to have some notion of prioritization. This feature, mechanic, setting, item is more important than these others, so that I can, use my time wisely, invest more time in the more important stuff, know more easily what I can cut, what's below the cut line. So like the casting UI, this is the most important thing in the game. The casting UI and the spell animations got the most of my attention out of any feature, because it's the primary way that the player interacts with the game space. So it needs that amount of development attention. Checking my DMs here. So these hand animations I spent a long time on. People seem to like them a lot, so I'm very happy with how this turned out. All of this is just dedicated FX work with Dreams' paint. I love Dreams paint. Okay, so now we're going to use the spell. We'll look in our book real quick. Travel, there it is. I can channel it into an artifact to jaunt into the umbral plane, or into a fireplace to ride the hearth fire. The travel spell has that arrow symbol on it. It's also on that clock. Of course, the clocks glow under moonfire. There's a lot of attention being paid to the clock and its symbols. It still takes players a while to notice, but I'm okay with a while. I made the icon darker and more obvious. I'm not colorblind, so I have to be careful with stuff like this. It's like relying on kind of like, is the contrast good enough here? I don't know. Now we're in the upside down. Crank like the chorus and stuff, right? It sounds super cool. You have like this upside down flex in the air, and again, making the magic work exactly as the player might expect, even when it doesn't matter. In the real world, Moonfire does not cast luminance. You can't light up a dark space with it. You have to have light. That is intentional, right? So the player couldn't always just have Moonfire up. Sometimes they want light just to see. But in the Upside Down, in the Umbral, Flame does not cast any luminance. Moonfire does, right? That doesn't matter at all for the game functions without that, but it's the sort of detail that I think is important. It's the underpinnings of my primary design pillar, so I want to really hit the mark there. We find notes that have been banished to the Umbral Realm and bound to them, so I can only read this when I'm here. If I were here in the physical realm, I would see nothing on the desk. Under Moonfire, the runes would glow, indicating that there's something hidden here. So this is how we get some notes that we wouldn't otherwise have for our book. And, you know, this space is beginning to present basically what the second floor really is, which is a big maze, an interdimensional maze. There are spaces here that you can only get by going over here and then teleporting to the Umbral and then walking over here, etc. So this is kind of a puzzle in and of itself, the layout. The layout's quite simple. It's actually not even, I don't think, a great layout. There's not a lot of loopiness to it. Take a look at it. The layout is just two big wings. We came up the stairs here, and we've been just tooling around over here. We walked down the long hallway with the shadow and picked up the candle. So it's just two major sections separated by this long hallway. But because it operates on another dimension, there's kind of hidden depths there. You can see again things that are banished cast shadow, even though you can't see them. So these kind of lattice gates look really cool when they're casting shadows, but they're not there. All of the spell animations are split body animations, animating left and right side of the body separately so that I can always support holding an object and casting a spell at the same time. This lights. It didn't used to light, but players called it to my attention and said, "Why doesn't this light?" And I said, "You're right, why doesn't that light?" Okay, so now we've got an opportunity for another spell. We just need new spell words. So at this point the player is looking for clocks. Whoops. If anybody has any questions, just let me know. I'll be looking over at chat occasionally. Here's the Banshees. Here's what they really look like. I had fun with these. These looked very bad. I actually shipped the game with a placeholder Banshees because there were reasons for Dreamers to push games out quickly all of a sudden. But yeah, I wanted to kind of go with like the Poltergeist TV static sort of trope here. So that's why they look like they look. Alright, so this book is hidden in the Umbral Realm. You can see it from the physical realm if you cast Moonfire on it. It's got a shadow on the bookshelf, even though there's no book, but it lives here, right? So the player needs to come here and read the book and they get a new spell. And this new spell allows us to speak with the dead. It's looking kind of old. And so the skeleton will tell you some stuff about the world and little flavor notes in there. They reinforce concepts I want the player to understand. They're often hints for puzzles, you know. But a reward, again, a payoff for the player, the curious player who thinks, I have a spell called Tongues. It says I can make contact with the dead. What happens if I cast it on a skeleton? Exactly what you think. thing it can do is make banshees go to the material plane, and this allows us to pass here. So like, this is an example of like, paper design all the way to implementation. This space was originally on my charts and it said double gate, right? This is a gate that requires 2 spells. That's all I knew at first. And then when I started concepting the spells, I said, okay, what are the ways that I can require tongues and teleport? What does that look like? And that eventually led to, spirits and how they behave and how they're only on the umbral plane unless you call them with this magic, and you can only see them if you're there too. And like, the top-down design kind of informed the details. So I started broadly and then filled in the tighter I got. Get some cool music here because this is basically a big lore dump. These notes kind of explain the answer to their question: where has Mother gone? And what they should do next. They basically learned that this reality, the umbral plane, is a stepping stone to other dimensions, and that Mother wishes to escape hers and go live in another. She describes here that there's a spillway, a leak between dimensions, and that she wants to wake from the dream and find a new purpose in a new world. This last note describes, so basically the big truths here that the player learns are that there's a secret fireplace that'll take you to Mother's hiding spot, but if you travel through it, your soul will get ripped into shreds. So we're going to go to the basement and perform a ritual to store our soul in an object. Another classic D&D-ism, Horcruxes, right? Soul cages. So the game plan is we need to follow Mother, but in order to do so, go to the basement to store our soul. There's also mention of a powerful magic weapon that's hidden in the woods. And so with all those pieces, the player is able to basically solve the game. This is the quest, the actual goal of the game that the player has to discover for themselves. It is never explicitly like told that this is how you beat the game. So this is a spell or a puzzle, of course, that requires Moonfire. This is the first puzzle that the player ever sees but is unable to solve, and they can come back and solve it. Now it is possible, of course, to solve this puzzle and go to the woods before you go to the second floor. That's okay. The players are allowed to do that. It's a Metroidvania or something. So they'll hit a dead end, they'll find that they can't progress any further, and they'll come back. Now I had to, after ship, saw players get stuck in too many places, so give them nudges to suggest where they have to go next. So basically the spaces that the player is able to navigate in the woods all end in one specific puzzle that requires something from the second floor, and there we remind the player, hey, you remember on the second floor there's helpful things, and that's kind of the call to action for the player to go back. I also mention it on the note just on the other side of the fence here as kind of like a, hey, heads up, before you go in the woods, maybe do you want to go to the second floor? And if they do, they do, and if they don't, they don't. Alright, so this space, the woods are a maze. It's a Lost Woods sort of thing. I felt like it was only correct to have a Lost Woods in my video game. It's confusing. Players get stuck. I wanted to make a maze and allow them to get unstuck, but I wanted it to be creepy, be surreal. So here we are. There's the gate. There's a side space. We can come back here. There's not too much to find. There's static here, which means that there's a secret ending puzzle element. But there's nothing else. There's a note. That's just a book note, though. There's a note. And now the woods and the notes start to discuss getting lost. And there's no exits now, right? Now we're stuck. The woods have been wound up like a corkscrew. And there's no exits. And it's just a corkscrew, right? If you go in one way, you get wound up, and to unwind, you go the other way. But I only know that because I made it. This was pretty damn hard to communicate to the players, so I added more and more signals. It really is kind of a reading exercise, and this is really where you kind of lose players who aren't here to read. Because the notes say, just go the other way around. And the notes say, look at the fireflies. They'll lead you back. And so the fireflies spin in the direction that you have to walk back. But this is all very subtle. Like it's it's a lot of little things. And ultimately, I would not say that this is the most elegant sort of thing going on, but it's very cool, and it is still very rewarding for the player when they figure it out. There is a big aha moment that they get to enjoy. So yeah, So here's another area. This is the hedge maze. So this area doesn't actually move or change or disappear in the way that the winding woods do. But there is one thing that helps players get lost, and that's like anytime we go looking down a wing, these statues always face you, and so it's unsettling and neat, but also it makes people lose the track of where they were, which is kind of cool. The player can kind of tool around here. There's a very simple puzzle to solve here. This is a great example of a puzzle that was very, very bad when I released the game. It was too subtle. I basically didn't have these flowers leading up. No, let me explain the puzzle, right? So it says complete the path of petals to pass, and what's going on here is the player needs to notice that there's certain types of flowers here on the walls. They may not notice it the first time, but as they're wandering around this space playing with the toys, they'll draw the connections here. Again, more puzzles that are fun to interact with, right? This is neat, spooky. People like this. I can change the flowers on the wall here as well. And now, like, my blue flowers meet up with those blue flowers. This big glow is very obnoxious, but it's just to draw the player's eye. There's a sound effect of the gate opening too that I think is actually pretty cool, and I love when I hear players go, "Oh, I just heard a gate open." It's like, yeah, okay, cool. But tons of players, no idea. They often, I've seen this puzzle solved on accident as often as on purpose, and it's just having a two choose three sort of quote-unquote puzzle here is just not deep enough to chew on and feel accomplished when you solve it. Alright, so we've got more spell words. Life, we have above. Far, do we have far? I think we skipped far, but that was from upstairs. So we're missing some notes, but more importantly, we're missing the rune that is required for that spell. So part of the problem with the winding woods here is that it's, what makes it difficult to understand is it does two different things at the same time, which is, I think, a mistake. It's drawing the player's attention in two different directions. So there's the whole winding up and looking at the fireflies, and there's also these lights that react to your candle. These are mentioned in the notes. This isn't like for the player to discover totally organically, but it happens. Players, once they've discovered the candle, very likely to be carrying the candle around. These flowers as well, reacting to the candlelight, is mentioned in notes throughout the level. Those will come into play in a minute. More notes, and again, more spaces that the player can get to, but they're unable to progress past. At this point, they should know that when they see objects with symbols on them, that means that there's a spell that they need to be on the lookout for, so we'll go look for that spell. And so, I wanted spaces to open up by candlelight. This whole follow the light trail over to this spot and then to another spot is simply to get the player on the other side of the trunk, because of course we're just doing some asset pop in, creating the trails behind the stumps. So we have to kind of hide the player's vision. This space is really simple when you look at it. This is the entrance from the house, and then they're actually turned off because they're hidden. Let's look at them. There they are. This is the entrance. There's the house. There's the path to the hedge, the path to the lake, the path to the graveyard. But when they're disappearing and appearing, it's very disorienting. This is a secret ending hint. So again, like the TV, it's something that doesn't make sense. So stadium lights from candles are nonsensical, right? Those surreal. So this is another spot where we're playing with those same kind of rule-breaking phenomenon. It's ghosty. This hint reminds us that ghost magic can be found on the second floor. And this puzzle asks for a sunflower and a ghost rose kissed by a banshee. The player can get the ghost rose here. I would probably have more of these objects scattered around, these rose dispensers. That's something I tried to do a lot, is have redundancy, but this is a spot that I actually could probably use a bit more. So let's get this ghost rose kissed by a banshee. No, it's glowy. Oh. You tell the player that they've succeeded. They know that they need one more piece. I was pretty concerned about having the player have to carry shit all over the place. So before, all of the sunflowers lived over in the hedge, but I put one here and I put some more along this trail, the flame trail, to one, reinforce the mechanic just to make it seem less gamey that it's occurring in many places, and two, for convenience, right? So the story here in the woods, of course, is that one of the witches is looking for the weapon, the powerful magic they can use to defeat the Mother Witch. This is a good example of devoting, you know, the right amount of time to the right amount of work. The space is pretty bland, pretty bland. I put a texture up on this brick wall, but it's not much, right? Um, One thing that was important here that actually one of my early players like said, "Hey, you should do this," and it was one of those the magic should work like the player thinks things, is that the player has just got the last rune, so they're able to cast the nature spell. And so what if they cast it here? Well, I mean, there's nothing, going on in here. So at the recommendation of this friend of mine, made sure that the spell actually does do something when cast in this space. It's just aesthetic, but it just had to be something. Alright, so we'll go ahead and jump into the secret space here. So here, again, the eye reinforces the secrets. The preening songbird sings a duet, and hey, for the very, very curious players, oops, how about one more? The butterfly kind of tells you exactly what to do. Call and response, repeat after the bird. And if I press these buttons after the prompts appear, we go. Alright, so the second visit, I wanted to immediately reward the player with some of that secret stuff that we enticed them with. So I give them basically some meta lore that Mother knows exactly what we're doing, and that everything that we're doing is her intention, and she wants us to solve the puzzles and all that stuff. And this voice offers an alternative. I offer you an alternative. So I'm kind of explicitly saying this is, here there be secret endings, right? Here there will be hidden things. It says specifically, come back 4 times. If you make it back a 4th time, I'll give you the goods. So very strong, very intentionally strong kind of call to action for the player. Like, come on, man, come get the goodies. All right, so let's run to the end of where the woods ends. Get ourselves some magic power, and then we can move on to the last level. Actually, we kind of reach a dead end. This note basically says, hey, look over there. There's a fireplace over there. Have you seen any fireplaces? And the player hopefully has seen a fireplace, but the note mentions how to get to the fireplace in case they haven't been, right? It's because there's the potential for non-linearity. I have to kind of cover the connective tissue of every secret pathway on both ends and point towards the other endpoints from each side. Indie Dreams asks me in chat if I'm going to develop another game in Dreams. The The answer is one of this size, probably not, just because of how long it took. I might dabble in stuff. I might help people with stuff. I was playtesting some friends' stuff the other day. I love Dreams. Can't imagine I'm not going to be like interacting with it in some capacity, but I'll never make a game like this. No. So we gotta go. Is it possible to port to PC? It is not possible. It is not possible. So we gotta go find that fireplace from the other side. This is a bit of backtracking that we're doing, but once we go where we're going, we're gonna unlock a drop back, unlock a path that makes the round trip way shorter. It's funny, a friend of mine wrote the logic for the camera rig that we used. Dreams has been updated since then. I think we wouldn't need it any longer, but it's a pretty custom camera rig, and because it uses trig, there's a problem where you start to get, this is what he told me, it's maybe not because of trig, but whatever, it starts to kind of get a Dutch tilt sometimes. I wrote logic so it autocorrects itself after a couple seconds, but I kind of don't mind it sometimes because I've seen people walking through this hallway and it starts to kind of like do this and it looks real nice. Thanks, man. Alright, so here, the player can get here earlier, so there's some notes about like what's going on here. This note can't be read in the dark, like all notes. I think there's a couple where I could make that more consistent, but again, it's, magic should work like you expect. We learned in the very first room of the game that you can't read notes in the darkness. Hints just talk about finding this crazy phenomenon on the other side of the lake. There's a secret back here, but it just tells us how to interact with the bird, which we already did. So here's our drop back. Now we can get right back to where we were a couple minutes ago. We'll use that shortcut in a minute. I like watching players get here because they see candles, they've cast Moonfire. There's no hints, there's no notes, right? This is how the world works. This is one of my favorite reveals here. This is so again, this is fantastic locations. I wanted just a lot of wow factor in these points of interest. So this is just a pit into nothing. This was inspired by a dreamer who makes these awesome kaleidoscope art pieces. I saw one of his scenes. I said, that's amazing. I made this. I sent it to him and I said, hey, I made this, inspired by your work. Do you want to make one for the game? He's like, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll do that. He never ended up doing it, but he did. He was okay with me, using his concept as just a sweet set piece. So this is the pit, and Mother has derived a powerful form of magic from the power of the pit that allows her to instantly banish any living being. Ostensibly, this is what she did to the friends of the main character. And this was added post-release. This is just one of those moments where players expect something to work away. They wanted that new spell that they got to do something with the pit. The spell just kills people, right? It doesn't have anything to do with big, demonic voids, but hey, why not, right? So, also, on this last page, we can see where we track our progress towards the secret stuff. I should probably have an eye on that page, and I don't. I have an eye on another page here, but not there. In fact, this eye begins the game closed, and after you visit the secret space the first time, it opens. All right, how do we cast a spell? I know most of them. I don't know these complicated ones. Get a cool visual flair. Alright, now we're going to go into a new space that was also gated by the nature spell. Show some Easter eggs here too. Let's see. We can just, eradicate the butterfly population if we want. In fact, I can't show you because the bird is gone now, but if the bird were still there, casting that spell on the bird, a force field with the word no appears around the bird. And it is very just I didn't think, oh shit, what if the player destroys the key piece of finding the secret ending? So I made it very obnoxious and kind of gamey, again on purpose. Everything related to the secret area is gamey. Oh yeah, this is another payoff moment. I have this cool nature spell. Surely it interacts with the tree, right? It does a little bit. It makes these little mushrooms come out of it, and I actually put one mushroom back here, so in case the player hadn't noticed the hint, this lights up the hint. So again, it's just rewarding curiosity any chance we can. Oh, I'm wound up. Okay, there's another payoff moment. I won't go just for the sake of time. There's another payoff moment in that dome where we get the germinate words, and that's just in case the player gets the rune first and the word second. Again, they're likely to cast the spell immediately, and so I have some vines kind of wrap down the pillars over on that dome. Okay, so the context for the basement is that the main character is going there to store her soul in some, via some ritual, allowing her to safely make the journey through extraplanar travel following Mother. Throughout the game, we've kind of anthropomorphized the house. They refer to the house like as if it is a person or an entity, and that really starts to manifest here, where they talk about its desires and what it needs to be, and that it's got kind of this shape-shifting quality to it. This mercurial goo is the essence of the house, unformed, and the basement, we start to see kind of the fabric of the house and what it constitutes. It's a nice little gotcha right here. Whoa! Watch out for that one. Toys, always toys. In fact, we've got a TV. This is a hint for the secret space. We also got these. This is a nice visual toy. Check these out. These are my favorite hammers, right? I mean, my favorite wrenches. Or, I mean, my favorite saws. Hints to secret things. And these crystals are kind of the remnant of the spell that I cut from the game, where you were supposed to be able to tune the frequency of these. So it'd be kind of like an analog radio dial or something, and we'd move through the color spectrum. It's kind of problematic, because like, colorblind people are gonna have trouble with that. So it might be better where it ended up, but in any case, instead, what we do is this note explains that the crystals just react to runes. They'll just copy runes straight up. And some pieces of the house like react to certain runes. Like this one reacts to, the square. You can turn it red or green or blue. When you turn it pink, it opens up. And here's where we start to see what the house really is, right? It's old god, it's cosmic horror. It's an endless abyss of unformed nothingness. I don't know how well this plays. Like, I had the idea of what this looks like in my head and tried to do my best, because again, at this point, this is all me. I've got no environmental artists helping me out. I think it's obvious, but yeah, this is just me doing my best here. So yeah, it's supposed to communicate that like this is just infinite void. We learn about the ritual here that we need to perform. It's got some steps. Spill the blood of the ancient, rest the blade in the sanguine bowl, and then cast the spirit spell. I can carry these little tentacles. Ask for it back. You can hand it back to them. Toys, right? Just carry this for now. And actually, we'll light it up. It holds the rune power, like the first one we found up there. And one of the hints explains here that as long as I'm holding it, it'll stay lit, which is great because there's no candles in the basement. There's no candles you can carry in the basement, I should say. This is your light source. And you learn through the notes that like the house is responding. The elder witch thinks that the crystals are like the teeth or the bones of the house or something. And she mentions that its limbs reach for crystals, and she says the gazers watch them. We can reveal secrets with magic. We see the X rune. Oh no! One of my Indy says it's interesting to see how I'm playing this game quite differently than they played it. Yeah, it is interesting. But it's better when you play it. I know it, right? It's like you can't play Outer Wilds twice either. These games kind of like fall apart once you know what to do. But it is also non-linear in a sense too. This lets us come into this space, and this is actually a space I could have gotten to if I had traveled in the fireplace to the basement from the second floor. I would have found myself in this room with this wall closed off with no way to proceed. So this is us opening up a drop back, and now we've basically opened up fast travel throughout the whole game with the fireplace system. Down this way is a cave. I would have liked this cave to have been a little bit more. This cave definitely violates my rules. There's only one thing to two things to interact with in here. It's a big space. It could be more exciting. I think the basement is where we show the seams the most. This is just a clue for my book, and this is just to play with. You can send lights going down into nothing. So while we're here, we're gonna actually go do the secret of the level first. Got the organ music kicking when you walk near the organ, of course. All right, so here's the secret space. The TV upstairs and the butterfly in the lab will tell you that the secrets are hidden behind the red gazer. So let's point the gazer at these squishy little lines here. And we've got more nonsense that doesn't make any sense. And more references to PlayStation symbols. I actually don't know the dance, so we're gonna have to do this the normal way and take some notes. So scattered throughout the level, there's a series of clues. There's some redundancy. I've got some repeats, so the player doesn't need to find them all. But we've got. Oh, I have it written on a whiteboard right in front of me. Okay, X triangle, square circle. A series of those combinations that can put them together, and the game says that they're dance charts teaching you how to do the crystal swing. You can take this back, and they can light up the ground. So these pads will turn whatever color crystal you're holding. Dreams. Had a hard time with that transition. Okay, so it's visit 3 of 4. And now the voice here is telling you that Mother didn't put her soul in the house like you might think. She put her soul into the very fabric of this place, right? And the game does the thing where it says the name of the game a lot. It talks about this place. And so, you're starting to become. She did what? Yeah, she put her soul into the fabric of this place. So the player might believe, I don't know, like, Indy, where did you think that the Mother Witch put her soul? Because she talks about how, like, the dagger isn't big enough, and the player ends up using the dagger. In the heart, yeah. So I think that's a common, yeah, that's what you're supposed to believe, is that she stored her soul in the heart. Oh, it's okay. We're spoiling the hell out of this game. This is a spoily playthrough. But in fact, this voice tells us it's more than the house. It's more than the heart. It's bigger than that. It's like the very, the molecules of the air. She tells you that you're never going to save your friends. The voice tells you, and that if you come back one more time, we're gonna break the cycle here and really stop Mother in her tracks. If we look at the windows, we start to see some stuff here. This is kind of where the game gets indulgent in meta. These are all images of different dreams projects. Some of them are mine. This is something I made. couple of years ago, one of my first games, and just other stuff from the Dreamverse. Like this is a media molecule character that most dreamers would be familiar with. um, all right, so let's solve the basement. So we have to basically repeat the ritual steps, which involve slaying the house. Oops. Run, 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 run. We gotta put a knife in the house's heart and use its power to store our soul in a magic dagger. Somebody asked in chat, how did I develop the story? So yeah, the story really came from the spells and the order of the spells. I didn't develop the story first. I knew like the broad strokes. In fact, here we can real quick do some supplementary documentation here. This is my design doc. This is how I started off, writing broad strokes, everything I want from the game, the way I want it to play and to look and to feel. And so you can see that even at the beginning, I had the broad strokes of a girl coming to a house, learning that she's a witch, solving puzzles by casting spells and performing rituals. Art and tone, very important for the game. I love Inside. This game is really an amalgamation of all the things that I love and was playing at the time. Inside, Inscription, Control, and Outer Wilds, I think, would be the big influences. And Inside and Control, especially from an art perspective. Liminal spaces was important to me. The sense of eeriness that you get when things aren't quite right. I call it Control, of course, is doing this quite well. Inscription. Gameplay, the book, how important the book is going to be as a note-taking device. Early sketches of the runes in the forms and domain book entries. Everything is a toy, fantastic locations. This is designing clue breadcrumbs, but I eventually made that that became practical magic. Yeah, the plot, it's like Scooby-Doo, but the monsters are real and people die, like Stranger Things. Long Dead Witch. Yeah, so I had the broad strokes quite early. I'm trying to think when I wrote this, probably like 2 years ago. But it was supposed to be tropey, like Cabin in the Woods. Like, what's the most kind of stereotypical thing I can do? And the whole reason why I have a narrative about witches that lived hundreds of years ago is simply to have a vehicle to deliver information to the player, but in a way that's like not totally dry. I could have done a better job, I think, with the personality of the girls, making them more distinct. Because in my headcanon, Alice is brave, Min is smart, and Victoria is headstrong, um, um, but passionate. But that maybe doesn't come across on the page, right? I only have so many words to work with, and the character that you play is supposed to, embody the qualities of each of them. But that is not communicated in the game, right? That's just kind of what I was thinking while writing. So this space, this is I don't know if this puzzle worked. This puzzle is supposed to basically test the player's knowledge and say, okay, do you know that Banshee cries make these orbs activate? Do you understand? Because when I think about my spells, I think, okay, this is the mechanic of the spell, right? This spell, one of the things it does is temporarily make ghosts appear. So how can I make that matter in different ways? On the second floor, I have a bunch of places where the ghosts are static. They just stand still, and you need to just stand where they stand and summon them. Excuse me. You just need to stand where they stand and summon them.
But I also wanted to try to, introduce the layer of, okay, the ghost is moving now. You have to make sure that it appears in the physical realm at the right moment. And this is like the simplest version of that. It's like a single patrol route. The ghost just passed like an L in this room, and occasionally it will be beside the orbs. The problem I had with this is that like it's annoying to wait here for the ghost to come by. And so I suppose I could have had like two ghosts patrolling, like vice versa. But then it's like quite hard to not do, right? You accidentally do that. In fact, many players accidentally solve this puzzle even as it is. So I'm not entirely happy with this puzzle. Also, you can really start to see now this is designer art right here, man. This room is probably the worst room in the game as far as environmental art. There's nothing here. The skull is there. If you miss time the spell cast, you at least get a hint about what's going on. All right, let's go do the deed here. This puzzle as well, I massaged after release. I changed the words of the in the book here. This book basically tells you you gotta get a crystal, two crystals, in fact, to this organ and instill them with the runic power of bone and soul. So, the player refers to their book, they find bone, they find soul. One of those two words they unlock here in the basement. It was the clue in the cave. And then they hand the crystals over, but it didn't used to say that. It said something about singing a song of bone and soul, and it turns out that the spell that you use to talk to the dead uses bone and soul. So it was a perfectly reasonable mistake for players to make, to think that that clue asked them to cast that spell, but it didn't. I think I could have made these paths like half as short, maybe. I made them as big as they were to make sure that that initial view as you descend looked good. But now I've got a gameplay problem where it's a little long. Um, for dreamers out there, Bad Robo made these tentacles for me. I saw the work he did on his Returnal scene, and he made that flying monster look so good. So I asked him to make me some tentacles, and he put them in the scene. I unpacked them, saw how they worked, played with them. I made these ones. These are made of paint. I mean, he made some paint ones, but I made you know the mechanics here of grabbing and reacting to the crystals and stuff. But I think these came out really well. All right, let's light this bad boy up. Okay. Where did I put my knife? There we are. Okay. All the lights go out, the music stops. Um, all the tentacles hang limp, including this one, which is actually a teeny tiny tentacle that's invisible and placed right in front of a light to get a big shadow. sounds because there's a dance chart on that pillar. And we cast. I added those words, soul stored ritual magic, like a week ago because too often I saw players just go, "What? What just happened?" And so they didn't know, you know. They're reading, but they're not reading. Um, and at this point, if you've gotten this far and you don't know what to do, you're like so close to the end, so close to the end. That reminding you, oh yeah, right, souls. Why is that important? I think I'm hoping it's a recent change. I don't know how it's played out yet. I'm hoping it's enough to kind of suggest to the player, go do the thing that they keep talking about. Because there's many notes here in the basement, up on the second floor, everywhere, talking about how Mother has hidden herself behind a fireplace that exists only in the Umbral realm. And when you first learn to travel through the fireplaces in the game, there are some notes that say you're not allowed to travel from uh, the the umbral. You have to travel from the material plane, and the secrets are all about how Mother has broken that rule, and that's why you need to store your soul. And yada yada. So my expectation is the player knows the goal now, right? They've got the magic weapon, they've got their soul stored safely. There's only one thing left to do. That's go find Mother and stop her. No, actually, I'm not. I can't remember that movie at all. Is it similar? Coraline. So finding the hidden fireplace is kind of a puzzle in and of itself. It's mentioned many times. Um, yeah, Big Bad Evil Mother. Yeah. It's just like tropey. Right? The fireplace is mentioned many times, but again, the second floor is a maze of interdimensional travel. So the way to get there is to, whoops, magic. Gotta go this way. Now I'm gonna play through the regular ending real quick, and then I'm gonna do the secret ending, and I'm gonna talk a lot about secret stuff. So if you don't want to see it, if you haven't seen it and you want to play this game, go play it. For now, we'll do the normal ending. Hey, look, all the symbols match, right? This is more post-release iconography that I kept adding just to give players visual reinforcement, especially players that want to skim the reading. Just give them some fat icons to latch onto. This note just describes basically everything you have to do as the player, just to reiterate in case they get here, because it's very possible to get to this fireplace before you've stored your soul, and if you do, you die. You just respawn at the door over there. A cute Easter egg that I added is once your soul is stored, you can walk through ghosts. They don't harm you anymore. Because they're after souls. Okay, the last scene, this environment was made by Ghost Fruit, Dylan A.O. He did an awesome job. I made the webbing and Mother herself, but yeah, this environment was very cool, I thought. And so Mother is made to look like an, eldritch kind of horror, cosmic horror, insect-like. There's a lot of imagery that has to do with butterflies and rebirth and cocoons in the game. So this is supposed to be kind of like think the note says like Eldritch Horror Cocoon, literally. Um, she taunts you. She says, "I'm gonna kill you unless you kill me first," basically. And you just gotta do it. You gotta cast the spells, you know. So let's see if I can get it in time. If not, we'll see the death animation. Um, Square. Okay. So this is the end. The normal ending. The player witch defeats the elder witch. Um, we had originally planned to have a nice juicy cutscene at the end that lined up. In fact, I did the cutscene at the beginning. Originally, the environmental artist was gonna deliver that, but they ran out of time, and it became one of those things where I just had to do it to get it done as the owner of the game. The text here is kind of unsatisfying. Like it's kind of open ended. And it's all kind of pushing the player to want to go back. And then at the very end, I just have a very explicit, like, hey, look, there's a secret ending. You should go look for it. But that's This Place is Cursed. It's my environmental artist, Bud helped me with some camera logic, some QA. Gold star, thank you. And then one last, go back, go find the secrets. So we're gonna go do that. We're gonna go find the last secret. So, like I said, I was really, this game is really an amalgamation of a bunch of games that I played and loved. And one of the games I played and loved was Inscription, that has this whole like game within a game sort of thing. And so I wanted to play with that idea. I think it's a very dreamsy idea. I think a lot of dreamers, want to make like meta stuff. I don't know why. I mean, I'm guilty of it myself. So let's find out the deeper truths here. Go solve the last puzzle. So this proved to be the hardest of the secret puzzles for players, which means it was the hardest for me to like get into a spot where I felt it was fair. There's a couple of hints on the floor that say, hey, that shadowy spot, you can't bring a candle through there. You have to douse your candle in order to get through. So we're going to get the candle and follow those instructions. In fact, here, let's take a look. What do we say here? Oops. Shadow fire lights the way, but lit flames cannot cross the plane. So let's get the shadow fire out. This is another spot where there's a lot of redundancy. There's many clues on this level. I think there's 3 in total. There's another one in this room here. There's the skull in here. Let's show the Easter egg. In the storage room, there's a skull with an eye symbol. The eye symbol being the secret symbol. There's this skull. This is a skull too. Oops. This is just reinforcing how to travel. But this guy, my shades, dude. The poem in the dark hall is not symbolic. Take the words literally. So, and the text, right? It doesn't appear in the normal skull text. The skull text is usually like that. But the text on that other one was the text from the secret space, the place between. So we gotta douse our flame, and now we're in. We have an eye symbol to remind us, hey, look, this is secret stuff. And we have a poem. In this dark hall, a lit flame glows, and shadows show the shapes to call. This is the third version of this poem that I've written. The first two, totally different words, totally different rhymes, trying to communicate the same thing. There's little diagrams here on these pedestals. But if we follow the skull's advice and take the poem literally, let's just do it. Because what that hint is trying to do is a lot of players get in here and they're like, okay, dark hall, lit flame. Okay, flame. The rune that you use in flame is the circle, so this must be telling me put a circle on the right side. That's a fair conclusion to come to because the game is often asking you to translate text into symbolism. So it's a bit of a red herring, this puzzle, in a bad way. I don't like that about this puzzle, which is why I had to have that hint about taking the poem literally. There's also kind of, at a meta level, again, this is a secret puzzle, meaning that it relates to the real world in a way. It relates to the PlayStation symbols directly. And so you shouldn't be thinking about runes, but that's hard to ask of the player. But if they light the flame, the shadows show exactly what buttons I need to press. The last change I made was putting these little nibs. If you look at the shadow, there's a square, right? And I put these little nibs on the left and the right to kind of just point. Right here. This is where you should be looking, right here. So we're going to type in square, square, triangle, circle. Alright, the last visit to the place between, where we reveal everything. This is where I had a lot of inscription inspiration. If you play by her design, you're going to store your soul in the basement, and you're going to be an empty body, and she wants your empty body. Because Mother's goal is to inhabit your body and take your body to new places. And the hints here basically explain that to you. And now we refer to the player, and we refer to dreams itself. And now we're kind of just in really self-indulgent meta territory. So turn the PlayStation 5 on. This is an Easter egg, a very direct reference to Outer Wilds. When you talk to the few characters you talk to in Outer Wilds, you start with the questions, who are you and where are we? So this is me. I just basically explain what I've been explaining in this video. Why did I make this game? Because witch stuff is sweet. And it's in this way, one of my goals with this game was to kind of put a bit of myself into the Dreamiverse in the way that like the Dreamiverse has left its mark on me as a designer. Having my first design experiences in dreams, it was important that I kind of like pay it its due respect. It's a really cool, tight community. Of course, we are in the place between dreams. The fabric between our world and the Dreamverse is at its thinnest here. That's the first note to like a Dreams theme song. Dreams is real magic. Dreams is real magic. It's very cool, man. Like a place for budding creators and designers to cut their teeth. So now we kind of get kind of really meta. Media Molecule announces end of live support, and Dreamers are very upset. They're very heartbroken, and some of them direct their heartache at the wrong people, blaming developers and all sorts of nastiness. But that's not how it's got to be, you know? Like, we can look back on all of the amazing creations that were enabled by Dreams and by Media Molecule, and I think that's the healthiest thing to do. So, the hatred, the heartache of the Dreamers has cursed this place, cursed my game. So what do we need to do? We have to end it. We have to put a stop to the curse. So now we know the truth. There's no girl, there's no friends. It's a game. But the um, the battle for the souls of the dreamers, you know, that's real. So we got to delete this dream to prevent Mother from leaking out and infecting more of the Dreamiverse with her hatred. And we get our last spell. This is really fun to animate. I'm not playing the released version. What? That doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe I have to save online or something. Um, so this animation was inspired by Everything Everywhere All at Once, one of the best movies I've seen in years. And they have that moment where, you know, if you remember, like you did the thing with the kids and you looked at all the people in the steeple, and they look through and they like see alternate realities through their fingers. I thought that was really cool. So um, that's where that came from. Yeah. And so I had to be careful with this one. I didn't want. So this is the one spot where I'm like, okay, I can't just let the player delete every prop in the game. That would be insane. That would be awesome. If I had the time and the memory budget, I would do that. But I don't. So it's only usable on cursed beings, like the villain. So if we try to cast it here, it doesn't do anything. All right. It's really great seeing players when they get to this spot. You know, they're just like running around casting spells. They know them all by heart. And even if they forget sometimes, they're like, oh, I can just whip out my spell book like a wizard or a witch and refer to my magic. And I think I'm most happy with how the game realized the core fantasy of being a witch or a wizard. We pause time when we open the book here. Square circle, square X, triangle circle. Wait. Square, X, circle, triangle. And that's it. So for anybody who doesn't play Dreams, or anybody who has not created in Dreams, this is the default scene in Dreams. This is what you get. You get a little block of beige flex and a grid and a toolbar, and that's it. We've deleted the dream. So that's it. This place is cursed. Actually, the whole kit and caboodle. Um, yeah, making big game is hard. What really helped me the most was defining, you know, you want to start big and then fill in the granular details as you go. You want to have strong design pillars that you can point to anytime you need to solve a problem or address a design issue that you run into. You say, oh, I know exactly how I should fix that because my pillars say do this. My pillars say make sure that the best locations look the best. They say make sure the magic works consistently. So as long as you've got some good pillars, I think that's a great way to guide the development of a large game because it can get pretty complicated. This is permanently done. When we exit the game and we play again, I should actually fix that. I don't want them to hear the intro music at all. They come back here. The game is basically soft locked until they want to reset progress and play again. Because I wanted as much as I'm able to on the platform of Dreams, like have a real sense of permanence to the decision to delete the dream and stop the spread. Cool. Well, that's it. This place is cursed. Thanks for watching. And unless anybody has any questions, I'm gonna go play some video games. No, you don't. Gem Cloud. No, I'm not going to make any more big dreams. Maybe I'll make some small stuff. Maybe collaborate with some people. Um, but you can check out my other stuff. My PSN is Wathcloth. I've got some good small stuff as well, but nothing like this. Alright guys, thanks so much. I will see y'all later.